Hi, Arnau. Let's take a look at your latest set of essays, shall we? We've got the movie preferences, so let's see what you did here. The bar chart provided, good, illustrates the preferences of young females and males across the globe in regard to 6 different movie genres. Great, you named them perfect. Overall, comedy is the most popular genre. I can't read today. The most popular genre among males and females, while animation is the least liked for both groups. Fluctuations observed in both groups in regard to the rest of genres. Okay. Um, so, oops. I don't know what that is. So once again, I want you to avoid the word fluctuations because it implies change and implies change over time. Um, so this is another example of a static bar chart where there is no change over time. It's just a snapshot of some moment, some undefined or non-designated moment. So we don't want to refer to things that imply some sort of change, okay? You could say, yeah, it's not fluctuations. It's because that's like an action. It implies some sort of action. Let's see. You could say differences are observed, and that would have been fine, honestly. Yeah, differences are observed in both groups. Regard, that's fine. That would have been good. All right. Action is the most picked genre in young males, 137, uh, whereas romantic movies are the least attractive in this group. In contrast, romantic movies, wrong word here. To the top is the first genre preference in young females, with the last preference for young women is animation. All right, let me double check your data. Um, so you said that action is the most popular for men and romantic is the least for men. Fine. And then for women, you said romantic is the most. Yes. And animation is the least. All right, that's correct. So there's one problem. Ah, I see. You wrote about comedy here. All right, that's interesting. So, um, the problem is that you've got some inaccuracy. Yeah, you told us that comedy is the most popular. That's fine. And then here, action is the most picked genre in young males. That's not entirely true. You just told us that comedy was. So it seems like you've got some sort of contradiction here. I understand what you're saying. You're saying that when we're looking just at the males group after comedy, uh, action was the most popular. It's not clear. Okay, it's clear to me because I'm an examiner and I understand what you're trying to say. But if I were being a real stickler, if I were being strict about this, I would say, no, it's contradictory. Therefore, there is inaccurate data. Okay? And it creates some confusion. So be careful with this kind of language. So you could have said here, following comedy, action is the most picked genre, whereas romantic movies are the least attractive in this group. In contrast, romantic movies, again, this idea of escalating, this is why I told you it was wrong. It implies some sort of movement, and there is no movement here. So you could have said are the top preference. Romantic movies are the top preference, okay? That would have been fine. Well, the last preference for young women is animation, and that's fine. So those little errors there. Comedy, with 145 in males and 137 in females, is the most picked genre of all, close to 160 votes between the. That's a little awkward. I don't know why you would say that. Uh, so yeah, this whole sentence feels a little awkward to me, and we're going to talk about it a little more. Let's keep going though. As mentioned before, both groups dislike in equal measure animation, with 63 and 54. Animation, drama, and horror all fluctuate with similar numbers for both groups, around 40 and 80. All right. So while it started nice, it started really strong, and I was happy with what you wrote, I do have some issues with all of this. Let me tell you why. First of all, the way you organized it, I thought it was really odd that you started with action. You should have started with comedy. I know what you're thinking. You're saying, but Ellen, I wrote about comedy here. Not really. No, you wrote about it in your overview. Just because you wrote about something in your overview, it does not mean you're done writing about it. And if it was important enough to mention in your overview, then you should give it uh, adequate importance in your detailed paragraphs. Okay. So for me, I would have started with that. Okay. Because then what happened was a lot of confusion was created when you said action was the most picked genre. Okay. So I thought all of this was good, except for this whole thing about fluctuations, which I already talked about. Um, and then this too, also, this was not really accurate. Animation was the least liked for both groups. That's not true because we already know that romantic was the least liked. So what you could have said here was overall comedy was the most popular genre among males and females, while their uh, least favorite genre varied, or while there were differences in their least favorite genre. Okay, so you could have said that. You could have said that. Or you could have said overall, males and females shared similar preferences for comedy, animation, and horror, while their preferences differed for the other movie genres. So that was another way you could do it. Okay. So just to give you some ideas, but like I said, I didn't agree with this sentence at all, and I felt that this was inaccurate. So since you talked about comedy here, like I said, it's not enough. You have to then go into detail. So I would have gone into detail here, okay? And I would have talked about comedy as you did, and then I probably would have talked about, well, there are actually a handful of ways to do this. One way to do it is to talk about men in one paragraph, okay? And another one is to divide it the way you did. Let's talk about what you could have done, how you could have divided these paragraphs maybe a little better. So one thing I think would have maybe worked here is if you had put the top and then the second top preferences in one paragraph. So in other words, comedy, and then you could have talked about how the men's second favorite genre was action, but for females it was only 82. Okay. And then you could say for women, the second most popular genre was romantic at 116, but the male preference for this was only 1/4 this amount. Okay. And so then what you've done is you've knocked out 1, 2, 3. Then you could have another paragraph where you talk about the remaining 3 genres: animation, drama, and horror. So you can see there that uh, I don't know. You can probably start with there are a handful of ways to do this, actually, a lot of different ways. You can talk about drama because that has, as far as I can tell, let me see, the next highest numbers for women, um, although not so much for men. And then you can talk about horror, you can talk about animation, and that horror and animation actually have the least differences amongst the genders. So that's one way to do it. Are there more ways? Obviously, of course there are. There are a million. You can see that right now. I'm just sort of telling you kind of spontaneously how I think I would organize this. So it's just to give you ideas about how to do it logically. Okay. I felt like there was some repetition, and I don't feel like you gave. Yeah, I see what you wanted to do. You kind of wanted to mush these together. And while I understand that desire, I don't feel like there is so much information in this chart that you need to do that. It's a good idea to do exactly what you did when it's a chart that has a lot of information. Like, for example, like if there are 18 or more pieces of data. As far as I'm concerned, when there's like 12 pieces of data, you should comfortably be able to fit all of them in. Okay, so let's take a look at your task 2 now. This is the advantages and disadvantages of travel. That's what you said. Nowadays, the practice of traveling to domestic and international destinations has become a habit for most people in modern working societies. Cheap flight fares combined with the need of workers to take a break from their routine have increased travel activity across the globe. This essay will discuss whether or not the advantages of traveling outweigh the disadvantages. Okay, this is great. Let's talk about one detail. the essay doesn't actually ask you to discuss if they outweigh. It's just asking you to discuss them. Okay, so this is what some people like to call a discussion essay. So you're just discussing, you're presenting the advantages, you're presenting the disadvantages, but you are not asked to provide a position. Okay, so we are not exactly concerned whether the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Do you know what I mean? You're leaving it to the reader to decide, but your position is not actually requested here. So doing this is not needed. All you need to say is this essay will discuss the advantages and disadvantages of traveling. Essentially, it's that simple. Okay. You might want to reword it, obviously, so it doesn't resemble the prompt, but I think you get my general idea, right? All right, let's see what you wrote. In the first place, going on a trip is a frequent healing practice for workers when they are on holidays. Okay, I get it. All right. Exploring new places, talking to new people, and eating a new variety of food has an opening mind. No, it's mind opening. That's the word you want. A mind opening effect, which allows the brain to reduce anxiety and eliminate stress. Okay. Secondly, the flow of individuals visiting new destinations willingly to learn and to try local traditions opens up the door for the tourism industry, which helps create new business opportunities among local communities. Therefore, travelers and individuals from these destinations mutually benefit from the travel activity. Okay, so the first thing I thought was kind of awkward, this sentence here. Okay, I didn't like in the first place. This doesn't really feel appropriate for the opening of a paragraph. Seeing as how you wrote on the other hand here, I would have suggested on the one hand. There are a couple of reasons. Number one, when you use one, you're more or less obligated to use the other. So on the one hand and on the other hand, they go together. And like I said, this isn't really appropriate language. So that would have been a better choice there. Now, apart from that, I thought the sentence itself was a little strange. Going on a trip is a practice when they are on holiday. So it just felt kind of redundant, like you were speaking in a circle. They're going on a trip, but they're on holiday. All right, maybe you meant that they are not at work, so they have a leave from work, and this is what you meant. But I thought it felt like kind of circular. It felt kind of redundant, so I thought maybe you could rephrase it. Okay, maybe you could have said when they have time off, or going on a trip is a frequent healing practice for employees when they have time off from work. So that would have worked if this is what you meant. Okay. Um, let's see. Then you said an mind-opening effect, reduce anxiety and eliminate stress. Maybe you could have said something. Maybe you could have given like a nice study here. You could have said studies have shown that people who travel frequently have report 20% less stress than those who do not travel. All right, you could have done something like that. That would have been nice. Let's see. So here you talked about the flow creates new business opportunities. Okay, again, there could have been an extra sentence. You could have said this allows the economy of areas to grow. All right, just really kind of supporting it. Just an extra step. Okay, let's see. On the other hand, those who argue that the activity of travel has serious drawbacks to be considered have a point. The most used ways of transport nowadays are the car and the plane, both presenting a considerably high carbon dioxide footprint in our environment. Great. Elevated CO2 emissions are having a great impact on our planet by accelerating it's called global warming, so careful, the global warming effect. Moreover, at a more local level, the tourism industry often attracts tourists who are only interested in partying and creating content for social media. Therefore, these places are usually left full of rubbish, and local individuals often can't develop their daily routines. All right, that's great. You know what? I really like your disadvantages. I often find that people write ideas that aren't really disadvantages. They're just kind of like, I don't know, things like the cost of travel, which is not, I don't really consider a disadvantage. I think what you did was great. The fact that travel creates CO2 emissions is absolutely accurate. Um, Hardy, that's fine. Maybe you could have said something a little bit different here. So, for example, These places are usually left full of rubbish. Not only that, but the character of the location is compromised because of this over tourism. Okay, these partiers, like, so things kind of lose their original beauty and their original uh yeah, their original character because they are overwrought with tourists and things that cater to tourists. Okay, and of course the rubbish that you mentioned. So those are some drawbacks, but I thought your paragraph was nice. I liked it. To conclude, traveling nowadays has allowed people to enjoy some benefits such as having a nice break from their daily working routines and opened up some business. I'm understanding this. I think you mean an opening because you said such as. The grammar here is weird. So is it has allowed people to enjoy and has opened up? Maybe this is what you mean, but it's a little awkward. Let me try it again. To conclude, traveling nowadays has allowed people, you know what? Yeah, maybe you could have put a has, because then it makes more sense that it has allowed and has opened. Because part of me feels like it should be opening. Does that make sense? Let me try it again. Traveling nowadays has allowed people to enjoy some benefits such as having a nice break from their daily working routines and has opened up some business opportunities in the tourism industry. However, the disadvantages due to such an activity, I would have said such activity in a more general sense, are affecting our environment, and sometimes local communities are affected by the abusive practices of some tourists. Great. And you know what's nice? You actually didn't give a position here, okay, which is what you were supposed to do. Unfortunately, here you you talked about this outweighing, which you weren't supposed to do. So you actually dealt with this really, really nicely, but this was inappropriate. Okay, so I'm really quite happy with this essay. I thought you did a really good job. Now, you may have noticed that I didn't really talk a lot about your vocabulary, whether I thought it could be upgraded or I thought, all right, there were a couple of mistakes. In general, I'm happy with your vocabulary because it gets the job done. The things that feel unnatural, I tell you what they are. But on the whole, the words that you're choosing feel precise. It's not like, oh, hey, this would have been a better word here. This would have been a higher level word that really would have gotten the job done. So, you had nice things like carbon dioxide footprint. That was great. Elevated emissions. Okay, a great impact. So all of this stuff, all these collocations are really nice. And I felt like the language was good. Grammar was fine. You could see I didn't really talk about anything grammatically. So it's nice. Little things that need to just be tweaked to take it to the next level. Okay. So I'm looking forward to your next set and yeah, looking forward to it. So good luck.